Hey, and welcome back to the Art of a Life Well Lived. I'm Christine Regan Lake, and it's good to be back here again. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I would love for you to do that. That helps me, it affects the algorithm so that more people know about my channel. And I'm really here to serve and to help those who are on a healing journey after divorce, after abusive relationships, after narcissistic abuse, things like that. If you find value in my channel, I'd love you if you would like, subscribe, or share my videos. If you feel comfortable and that's what you feel guided to do. Okay, so let's get started. All right, so what am I going to talk about today? Today I'm going to talk about 7 signs of self-betrayal. So, when you have grown up in a dysfunctional environment, now when I say dysfunctional environment, that can be anything from slightly dysfunctional to highly abusive to growing up in a narcissistic family dynamic, things like that. So, when you've grown up in a dysfunctional environment, you do not grow up with healthy models for self care, healthy boundaries, things like that. And as a result, you habituate, you model what you see, and then you start, living out your life in triggered reactions and in habituated behaviors that you saw growing up around you, which was purely dysfunctional. When we betray ourselves, it means that we are deciding to do something against what our better judgment is. Sometimes we delude ourselves, sometimes we do it while admitting to ourselves that we know it's bad for us, but we're doing it anyway, things like that. But 7 signs of betrayal. So, what are they? Well, the first sign is that you are dating someone even past the point of seeing red flags. So you're connecting with someone, you see red flags, they're coming up, something, your internal guidance system, your gut is saying, beep, 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 something's not right here, that's a problem, whatever. And you make a decision to ignore those red flags. I'm really tired of being alone. I'm sure it's not that big a deal. I'm overblowing it. And you will create excuses for that person's red flags. And when you make excuses for somebody, knowing that those red flags truly are not in alignment with your values, how you want to be treated, things like that, you are betraying yourself because you're lying to yourself. And anytime we lie to ourselves, we're setting ourselves up for failure in the future, because reality is what it is, regardless of whether we want to acknowledge the consequences. So if you're seeing red flags and you're ignoring it, it's really self-harm. You are choosing to say, I'm going against my better judgment. And why can you do that? Well, you might be doing it because you have fear of being alone. Maybe you're tired of being single and you just don't want to be alone anymore. So you're willing to be with someone, even if all of a sudden now they're insulting you, things like that, or whatever those red flags are for you. Maybe it seems like they're getting weird phone calls at certain hours of the night, or they are not inviting you to things, they've never introduced you to your family, things aren't adding up with their story about what they're telling you. When you ignore red flags, you are absolutely betraying yourself, and you are setting yourself up for future pain. So what's the second sign of self-betrayal? Going back to somebody who you know has already proven to you they don't have your back and they don't have your best interest at heart. And I will be honest with you, I will completely own this. This was a habit that I had in the past. I had friends that I would end connections with, and then at some future point go back and reestablish that connection, because there were parts of their personality that I missed or whatever. But ultimately, I had to end the connection again, because it just became so blaringly obvious to me that I could not be in a connection with someone, even if it's just a friendship, with someone who didn't share my values, who truly didn't have my back, was not someone who was trustworthy. I just, when you start to embrace self-love, there are things that become non-negotiable, and you no longer allow people in your inner circle who you can't trust. trust is the foundation of every single connection that you have. And if you don't have trust, you have no foundation for a friendship, for a business partnership, for a marriage, for a relationship, anything. So trust for me is, word one. And without trust, the friendship had to end. And, it was challenging. And I remember when I ended the friendship, I really wanted to articulate my thoughts. So what I ended up doing was I wrote a letter where I articulated everything that I was feeling. Because I'm a writer, I feel like when I write things, I'm able to think about it or whatever. But what I did was I wrote the first version of the letter and then I sat on it. And then I came back a week later and I looked at it and I rewrote it. And then I sat on it for a week. And then I came back the next week and and it was a month from the time I wrote the first draft of the letter to the final draft of the letter. And then I mailed it to my friend, and in the bottom of the letter I said, if you'd like to talk about some of these things, I'm more than happy to go to lunch, things like that, because I wanted her to be able to, share her side of the story or whatever. And so I mailed the letter off. And then I did hear from her, and she did want to connect. And then the morning of the day we were supposed to get together for lunch, she reaches out and says, so the time and location doesn't work for me anymore. The location that I had picked, that I had proposed, was halfway between where she and I both were, and it was in the morning so that we could connect, go back, and have the rest of our day to ourselves. She came back and said, that doesn't work for me. She gave a location that was 5 minutes from her house, which would have meant I was driving, 99.9% of the distance. And she wanted to do it at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was like, I just started to laugh because I was like, that was indicative of the friendship, right? It was like always, I was expected to the one to go further, do the extra step, do the extra mile, cater to her and all that other stuff. And I just said, yeah, sorry, that doesn't work for me. So when you start to heal, you start being able to speak up and have your boundaries and say, that doesn't really work for me. Whereas in the past, I can be very flexible. It doesn't matter. I'll drive, whatever. But it's like once something has become apparent to you where there has been an imbalance in the relationship and you commit to yourself that you are loving yourself, you deserve the best that love and life has to offer, and you're no longer settling for imbalanced, unhealthy, dysfunctional relationships, you cut that stuff off because you're just not willing to participate in those same negative patterns you had from the past. Okay, so so the first one was dating a person with red flags. Second one was going back to somebody that did not have your back. The relationship didn't work for you. So you go back against it ended for a reason, move on, right? But you go back to people who've already proven that they don't have your back, and this is not a healthy relationship that is serving of your highest good. So the third one is having the expectation that someone is going to be able to do something different than what they have already demonstrated they are capable of doing. If you are going into a connection, whether it's like, so now you've gone back to that person in an intimate relationship, and now all of a sudden you're expecting them, they've already proven to you who they are, and now you're coming back expecting them to be a more enlightened version of themselves, to now do behaviors they didn't do in the past. You have zero evidence that that person is even capable of doing that, and yet you're having the delusional expectation that this is what they're going to do. There's that story, I believe it was from the Bible, about was it the Bible? I don't know what book it was. maybe it's just a parable. Anyway, it's the story of where a scorpion asks a frog to carry it across the river, and the frog says, well, you're a scorpion, you might sting me. And the scorpion's like, no, I need you, I'm not going to do that, whatever. And so the frog takes him across the river, and once across the river, the scorpion then stings the frog, and the frog looks at him perplexed, and he says, why did you do that? I thought you said that you weren't going to sting me like that. And the scorpion looks at him and he said, you knew my nature and you took me across anyway. So that's the lesson of, if you know somebody's nature, you can't lie to yourself, and you can't delude yourself to think that that person is someone other than who they are. So you have to be raw and real and dirt honest with yourself, and acknowledge that people are who they are. And yes, people can change. Change is an internal game, though. Someone has to change of their own accord, of their own drive to be a better human being or whatever. But if someone has already proven to you in the past that they are incapable of certain behaviors, of being honest, of being faithful, of, honoring your commitments, of not insulting you or putting you down, why are you lying to yourself and pretending that this person is capable of doing something that they have never demonstrated themselves to be capable of? Okay, so that was number 3. What's number 4? So this is when you get along, you basically get along to go along, right? Where you say yes when it's no. When you concede to something that you don't want to do because you can't handle confrontation. And let me tell you, I was born onto this planet with confrontation issues. I was non-confrontational to the oomph. It's really funny because in my early part of my life, from like 4th grade on, for 15 years, I had throat issues. I would have swollen, my throat would swell up, and like literally I was hospitalized like 4 or 5 times because my throat would literally swell up and close over. And that was because I just kept swallowing my truth, right? And that's what a acupuncturist said to me years later. I'm like, oh yeah, 15 years I had those throat infections. It was ridiculous. And she started laughing. She's like, what were you not saying? And I was like, it's all about your throat chakra speaking your truth. And I had done that because of my fear of confrontation. I would swallow and swallow and swallow things, and I would say yes when it was no, or I would just keep my mouth shut when I felt like there was an injustice about something or whatever. And that's one of the signs of self-betrayal, is that you are conceding to things that no longer work for you, that don't work for you, because you're afraid of confrontation and speaking your truth. When you love yourself, you learn to say, no, that doesn't work for me. And no, absolutely, unequivocally, is a complete sentence. You don't need to explain yourself. It doesn't work for me, period. Okay, so what's number 5? So number 5 is when you know better about something and you consciously decide to do it anyway. And there's a lot of ways to do this. This isn't just about relationships, right? So there are times in the past, one of the challenges that I've had in this lifetime was that food was my vice. I was a binge eater or stress eater or whatever you want to call it. And there would be times when I was under an immense amount of, pressure and tense, attention and things like that. And I would go to the kitchen, and I'm walking to the kitchen, and I know I'm about to overeat. I know I'm about to go in there and just completely unconsciously eat and overeat. And I know it, right? And I did it anyway. And I allowed myself to go in there instead of like maybe go and meditating, go and do some kind of EFT, do some EFT on myself because what was happening was that I was being triggered into massive anxiety, and the act of eating that food would calm my nerves, gives me the distraction, all that stuff. And so I would do it, and I would know as I was walking to the kitchen that I was about to do that, and I would do it anyway. And I was self-sabotaging, and I was betraying myself. So there's a lot of ways to do this. All these things, the self-betrayal isn't just with regard to like your intimate relationship, your marriage, your friendships, whatever. It can be about personal choices completely for yourself. Okay, so number 6. So the next one is that where you do the like I am an island thing, right? So self-betrayal is when you know you need help, but you tell people you're fine and you don't reach out and ask for help. That is self-sabotage, self-betrayal, whatever you want to call it. There's nothing shameful about needing help. There's nothing shameful about saying, can you listen to me right now? I need to talk. And maybe that okay is what's, not good for you is that you're just so anxious and you need to just bawl your eyes out. And so you bawl your eyes out. Or maybe it's physical challenges. Maybe you're having issues with, breathing and just doing functional things, and you literally need help. Maybe you need help with someone to help you, like go to the grocery store or pick you up, like whatever it is that inability to ask for help when you need it. We are in this world together. There are so many people that love you and care about you and want to be there for you and would be more than happy to support you in your time of need, whether that's emotionally, physically, financially, whatever it is. So the inability to ask for help when you need it is another sign of self-betrayal. And then the last one, 7, which is kind of similar to conceding, which is agreeing to things that you don't want to do, right? So friends, ask you if you want to go out and stuff like that, like, would this be a good day, whatever, and it really doesn't work for you, and then you say yes. So really 7 is saying yes when it's really no, which is very similar to 4, which is conceding to things instead of a confrontation. And the conceding to things, the confrontation could be about like where someone's picking a fight with you about your values, going back to that in terms of the conceding with regard to confrontation. I had a friend who several years ago struggled with cancer, and she told me shortly before she passed that she had deep regret that she had allowed herself to be influenced by the people in her sphere of influence to choose like chemo and radiation. She really believed in natural things like that, but I guess she felt like it was just kind of too much to there were too many people coming at her, and she conceded, and she had deep regret about it, which really broke my heart. So in terms of the conceding to things with regard to confrontation, if you believe in your soul, what is right for you, you can't betray yourself and allow people to influence you, whether through guilt or shame or fear-mongering or things like that. Because ultimately it's your life and you're the only one who has to live with the consequences of your decisions. So I just wanted to backtrack about that, because that is definitely different than saying yes to things that you don't want to do. So in terms of like agreeing to things you don't want to do, it's like I'll go do this, and maybe it's spending money you don't have money to spend, or maybe it's going to some kind of function that you're really not into, going to a loud, like me personally, I love like small, intimate little music venues. I really can't stand the big, huge, massive whatever. Like very infrequently have I any desire to do something with those massive crowds and stuff like that, probably because I'm an HSP, a highly sensitive person. So that is a complete bombardment to my energy system to be in a huge group like that, which is why I prefer the smaller, intimate, gatherings and things like that. So anyway, those are the 7 signs of betrayal. Dating a person with red flags, going back to relationships that haven't worked for you in the past, expecting people to be different and different than they were in the past, or expecting them to be capable of behaviors they've never demonstrated they're capable of doing, conceding because you don't like confrontation, allowing yourself to be pressured into things that you don't agree with, that are not in alignment with your soul because of groupthink, guilt, shaming, fear-mongering, whatever. Knowing, number 5, knowing better but consciously making decisions that are not in your best interest, like I gave you in terms of going in there and overeating when I was stressed out. 6, telling people you're okay when you're not and refusing to ask for help when you need it. And 7, agreeing to things that you don't want to do, saying yes when it's really no. So those are the 7 signs of self-betrayal. They're very common for people who grow up in an unhealthy, dysfunctional, narcissistic household. And you will find that as you take the path of self-love and self-healing, you will find that you stop doing these things one by one by one. You start loving yourself enough to say, it's not worth betraying myself. I love myself enough to, put myself first, make myself a priority, honor who I am, honor my boundaries, speak my truth about what matters to me, walking my path even if people don't agree with it. And, generally just understanding that you have to love yourself first. Like if you have to embrace self-love, because if you don't have self-love, then there's nobody that can fill that cup of self-love, right? So you have to fill the cup so that you have an overflow to give to others. Because if you are giving and giving and giving to others and not refilling your own cup, eventually you will become angry, resentful, bitter, and you will make yourself sick because it's unhealthy. And the body seeks balance. It knows when you are betraying it. And so it is in your long-term best interest to commit to yourself, to stop betraying yourself emotionally, physically, financially. Spending money that you don't have causes you long-term stress, sabotages your future, your retirement, things like that. So if you're on the path of self-love and you are truly committed to it, then one by one, you want to stop taking part in actions that betray your self-interest, emotionally, physically, financially, spiritually, and in all the ways that you're living your life, right? So I hope you found value in that. Please give me any comments in the comment section if you have any topics you would like me to cover. I always want to be serving your wants and needs and what you really want to be hearing. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. So I hope you found value. Have a beautiful day, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.